Oh, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Yusadia Brusma. Apology. Now we're about to start. Welcome to the winner session on the decolonizing research methodology perspective from Indonesia. And you may have seen that the title is also that listening to woman nature and ecology. We have lined up um, four speakers for today. They will presented their research, and this overall research program is part of the NICMCR project, Netherlands Indonesian Christian Muslim Relation Consortium, in which we have a 3 years program of project. It's called Decolonizing Research Methodology. But first, we will have the introduction of what the idea of the meaning of research methodology with the Dr. Tamara Sukota here. She is currently a researcher affiliated with the Civic Innovation Research Program at the International Institute of Social Science at the Erasmus University Rotterdam. Her work is influenced by her interests in decoloniality and other knowledge as well. Her background is as a researcher and a practitioner. Completed her doctor degree at the Development Studies and the International Institute. It's a similar where she is now affiliated with. Her PhD title was the past in the present, segregation and relational peace building in Ambon. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Tamara Sukota.
Thank you, Yus, and I will share my screen now to present. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Today I will give an introduction about decolonizing research methodologies and what does it mean to introduce this panel. Um, so I will start with coloniality. What does coloniality means in the context of a triad of modernity, coloniality, and decoloniality? Then I will speak a little bit about erasures and science and scientific methodology or methodologies now. Then we look at research methodology, decolonial as an option, and what does it mean to decolonize methodologies. And I will close by looking at recognizing, resisting silences and erasures in research and science. So to say that we want to decolonize or to decolonize implies that there is the colonial. Nowadays, we speak about decolonizing and decolonize without much referring to the colonial. But in order to understand what decolonizing is, we need to understand the colonial first. Because after all, a decolonize or to decolonize comes because we do have a colonial past that still continues in our present. So, what is coloniality, and how does it differ from colonialism? Colonialism is a European concept, but coloniality is not a European or Eurocentric concept. It was coined by Aníbal Quijano, a sociologist from Peru, name what he or what we understood as the underside of modernity. That is our universal modernity, which was basically best a Western modernity that after colonialism became the modernity or the universal modernity. It refers to a logic of domination, which is also underlying logic of the practice of Western European colonialism, and at its center is the extractivist practice of capitalism, racism, and knowledge production. Now, Mignolo and Rolando Vasquez, Walter Mignolo and Rolando Vasquez understands also coloniality as a history of violence that runs parallel to the history of progress, that is modernity. And this history of violence or coloniality involves negation of the other. It can be other worlds, and it also involves erasure, disdain, and denigration. Maria Lugones, an Argentinian philosopher, basically understood or defined coloniality as the process of active production of people, the dehumanization that fits them for the classification, the process of subjectification, the attempt to turn the colonized into less than human beings. It's also referring to experiences of erasures, peoples, knowledges, ways of knowing, cultures, language, and all this kind of things. So from the colonial perspectives, different than post-colonial, we don't see that there is a post to the colonial. We see that coloniality is not over; it is all over. Why? Because coloniality, as a logic of domination, survives colonialism as the political administration. So for the colonial, there is no post or neo to the colonial. The colonial has not left. The colonial is still ongoing. And within this colonial world, with its coloniality as a logic, as underlying logic of domination, we see that we still have the West claims its superiority and rules over the rest in all aspects, politically, economically, socioculturally, and important to our talk today is onto epistemologically. So in knowledge production, coloniality continues in the idea that only European culture and people is deemed rational and therefore can be subjects of knowledge, while the rest are deemed inferior and therefore assigned the position of objects. Now, all of our speakers here come from the context of Indonesia, and this idea of there are people who are subjects of knowledge, and there are people and cultures that can be subjected or objects of knowledge also is reproduced within the context of Indonesia. And the idea of race then becomes racialized to, let's say, indigenous communities or nature. Um, so, what does it mean to have coloniality as the underlying logic also in scientific knowledge production? That means there are bodies that are erased. The presence of these bodies are not values in the scientific knowledge production as subject of knowledge. They can be there as objects of knowledge, objects to be known, to be investigated, but they are definitely not to be subject of knowledge. To be subject of knowledge, you need to inhabit a particular body and you need to come from a particular territory in the world. But erasing bodies, taking away these bodies from the co-generation or co-creation of knowledge also means to erase the knowledges that these bodies bring with them, and erasing the ways of knowing that these bodies also bring with them. And the underlying assumptions behind this erasure is that the fact that education, or in this case, higher education, university, is one of the pillar of coloniality, and it's a modernity project that, with the aim or the purpose to make humans out of the savages, to civilize the uncivilized. So if you go to university, if you go through the educational system, that means you're taking away all the, for people of color, not necessarily for European people, is to take the savages, the uncivilized part out of you to make you human. And there is also the assumption that, still the ontological assumption of the West over the rest, where the West has the right to know and has the capacity to know, and the rest basically are there to be known. Um, and here, the West, or if we bring it to the context of Indonesia, racialization means that there are certain people who come from certain part of Indonesia with certain level of education. They are more civilized than the rest, and they are basically have the capacity and the responsibility to educate or teach others. Now, that also means erasing worlds and erasing ways of knowing, because erasing also erasing ways of knowing. Maria Lugones speaks about understanding the world and understanding other people's experience through what she called world traveling. That is, to travel to the worlds of others and see how they experience those worlds from where they are. But when we erased people and erased ways of knowing, we erased worlds, then we limit our possibilities to basically travel to worlds that we already erased. So when we allow this plural worlds and ways of knowing to exist in the classroom or in our space of generating knowledge, then we have a more enriching experience and enriching knowledge, on our understanding of the world as well. Also, plural ways of knowing provide more diverse picture, and therefore also more diverse and more possibilities of imaginations of the worlds otherwise. Now, Decolonial came as an option, as a response to modernity, that is history of progress, and of course coloniality, that is the violent side of that progress. One of the tasks of decoloniality is to resist in order to re-exist. So coloniality have erased existences that does not fit its purpose, and decoloniality is resist this erasure in order to re-exist, to exist again. Now, in research, what we do is decolonial investigation, and the purpose of decolonial investigation is to make visible what has been rendered invisible. So, in order to make modernity as history of progress, let's say development, shines, we have to erase other things that prevent that modernity to shine. So these are, other kind of knowledges, nature, women, or other minority groups, in order to make the one that we want to shine. So decolonial investigation is not looking at the visible or the one that shines, but we are looking at the darker, the underside of what is being highlighted. So it sheds light on on coloniality. Decolonial as an option also calls for bodies that are erased. In Europe, in the context of Europe, that means people of color, racialized communities, to occupy theorizing space, to not allow that space to only be occupied by those who claim themselves as the one who has the right to know. And in terms of what we call now, or what we know now as decolonizing methodologies, it's about knowing and knowledges otherwise. So for us, let's say if you choose this option, that means your research, in your research and in your writing or other forms of disseminating knowledge, it's also your way of resisting or re-existing coloniality and epistemic erasure. So to decolonize a research methodology, it used to be singular and now it becomes more plural, means to resist in order to re-exist. It also means to remember what has been dismembered, and these are ways of knowing and knowledges that has been separated from us. For example, the segregation between human and nature, that was a part of the practice of the colonial practice of dismembering. So we take away human and then separate them from nature and say that this is nature, this is human, put them in different categories. So this is one process of dismembering. So to decolonize is also to bring together what has been dismembered, to remember. And it's also mean delinking from coloniality, and by coloniality here I'm referring to logic practice of segregation, separation, dismembering. And one of the core logic of decoloniality is to relate, what we call relationality is basically to relate to others, to resist this idea of segregation. It's again going back to remember what has been dismembered. And to decolonize means also to exist, to be, um, in verbs, existing, being, worlding, otherwise. That means we relate to others, we relate to our world in ways that are not the normalized colonial way. In scientific knowledge production, we also know that science comes from a particular period of time and a particular location in the world, but at the same time, it became known as the universal way of knowing, as if everybody around the world has science as their way of knowing. And the idea of decolonial is not to say that we don't need science or scientific knowledge production. We just say that we localize science and we reduce science and scientific methodologies to size. That means it's not the universal way of knowing, it's not the universal knowledge, it's just one way of knowing and one kind of knowledge. And to decolonize also means that we are going to look into absences and listening to the silences. In this panel, we're speaking about the voices of women, nature, and others. Resistance is a decolonial praxis, and it's a struggle against ongoing colonial violence, which is not necessarily past, but still very much part of our present, because the colonial is not over. And resisting coloniality and scientific knowledge production also means to reclaim ways of knowing that have been made invisible, that has been pushed to the margins, that has been silenced and erased. In a way to resist epistemic erasure. And many of us also do this kind of research out of anger. Um, One of the phrase from Walter Mignolo is that I do this because I was angry and I know how to do research. It's not just uh, it's not just any kind of anger. It's not just anger that destroys, but it's what in the colonial perspective we called dignifying anger. Dignifying anger is the anger that comes from people that have been dehumanized and have been erased their existence, and then there's this anger to uprise to reclaim their humanity or reclaim their existence. And what we do with this resistance is not just to reject the colonial or to reduce science to size, but we also imagine and co-creating futures. Otherwise, what our future in science or in university looks like, or in knowledges and ways and in our understanding of the world, how do we want it to look like? We also have to imagine and co-create the future that we want. And that means imagine possibilities beyond the modern colonial framework. If there are particular sets of techniques of data collection that are prescribed and say taught to us as these are the ways that you can investigate whatever topic you want to investigate, decolonizing research methodology also means that we imagine possibilities, other ways beyond those prescribed methods. And it could mean excavation. That means looking back into the past before science and scientific ways of knowing came into being. How do people relate to the world? How do people understand the world? So looking into the past as source of alternatives. um, I think this is my last slide. It refers to we also to decolonize also means to recognize silences and to see absences. And I think many of the research or the studies that are going to be presented in this panel speaks about that. um, Usually this comes from the ground because some things are recognizable to us because they are part of our world. We can recognize silence could be because we have experience being silenced, and we can recognize absences because we have been part of absences. And decolonial is the linking from the questions asked by modernity or modern research projects. And we link from that logic by asking different sets of questions, looking into things that are not investigated by science usually, and to change the terms of conversations. In Catherine Walsh words, we co-create cracks in science and scientific methodologies. And this for decolonial is something that should go beyond classroom and research setting, because after all, decolonial is not just you change your methodology and that's it, but decolonial is a way of thinking, of being, of living, and of existing in itself. I will leave you with that, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. To remind everyone in the audience, please collect your, we will collect your questions. So write up your question on the chat box. We will collect it in the end, and we will have a session and question and answer. I'm going to invite my first presenter, Zaima. Okay, while we're waiting for her, I'm going to read up her bio here, but then just going to check, is she, is this, can anyone confirm, is she already, no, okay, so can we go to the next presentation, please, to Teguh? Is that possible?
Yes, no problem.
Yes. So Teguh is ready. Teguh is a professor at the psychology at the University of Surabaya, Indonesia. His work explored the intersection of critical psychology, environmental education, and eco psychology, with a focus on how cultural and spiritual narratives shape human nature relations. He co-founded the Eco Psychology Study Club at his university, and his recent project examined the role of local wisdom and the cultural practices for climate education in Indonesia school through the decolonial lens. Thank you so much, Pak Teguh. Please, you may start. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. The title of my presentation today is Decolonizing Climate Education, Building Stamina for Climate Resilience Through Reconnection. Okay, let's start. Climate change education has increasingly become the new star on the block. From early childhood to university education, countries are rushing to introduce climate literacy into their curriculum. Climate change learning materials are mushrooming, but the ingredients are similar. First, scientific facts about the Earth's rising temperature and the destructive consequences of it. Two, the mechanism of Earth's climate disturbed by excessive greenhouse gases emissions from modern human activities. And three, solutions to adapt to and mitigate climate change. Such transitions to renewable energy, planting trees, such as transition to renewable energy, planting trees, and low carbon lifestyle. Climate doomism must be carefully avoided. Instead, collective climate actions are encouraged. Next, please. However, there has been criticism against this dominant approach to climate education. Next slide, please. Thank you. Firstly, it is based on secular worldview where the ontology of the mechanical universe underpin climate education. Living cultures and religions aside, as well as the deeper roots of climate change, namely the extractive and consumerist ideologies of the capitalist system. Wrong slide. Can you return to the previous slide, please? Hello. Okay, thank you. I hope the slide works well now. Secondly, it ignores the post colonial injustices both in the cause and the impact of climate change. Thirdly, the solutions taught to students, including the hope it offers through collective actions, might not be realistic enough considering the extent of climate situation we have now. In short, the criticisms are Western scientific universalism, climate technological solutionism, and false hope for immediate change through collective actions. How can we deal with these critiques? How can we decolonize climate education and build alternatives to the currently dominant Western approaches? Next slide, please. Not this one. We have put it on this slide before, so the next one. One revolutionary approach is proposed by Sharon Stein et al. In their article Beyond Colonial Futurities in Climate Education. Speaking from the post-colonial and indigenous context of North America, they developed an advanced climate education course called Stamina for Sustainability, because the fight for climate justice will be long, difficult, and requires massive and fundamental changes in terms of capitalist and colonial systems. Instead of offering false hope for immediate change, their course deepens students' intellectual engagement with climate crisis, address their emotional responses to uncertainty, complexity, and complicity, sensitize themselves to the difficulties in making substantive change, and develop a sense of relational entanglement with the world without seeking easy answers. While Stein et al. Intently deals with uncertainty, complexity, complicity, all the difficulties we and our students have in climate crisis. Next slide, please. We believe that what sustains our long-term struggles here must be more than that. Reflecting on our project on local culture-based climate education in Indonesia, we find that, next slide please, we find that building stamina for climate resilience requires a reconnection with resources that sustain that stamina. Taking a tree as an illustration to understand how we may stand tall against mounting challenges in the long term, we propose a climate education that reconnects students with resources that sustain life, represented metaphorically here in this presentation as roots, water, and leaves. But before discussing these findings, we now briefly explain our project, from which our reflections were generated. We engage with teachers from all over Indonesia in a project titled Climate Change Education based on local wisdom. After some local one-day workshops in 4 different regions in Indonesia, we opened a national call for teachers to participate in the creation of lesson plans on local culture-based climate education. More than 500 teams submitted their lesson plans, and we selected 30 best teams, that is 60 people, to come to the 3-day event in Yogyakarta last May. The main agenda is them sharing their lesson plans to each other and some bonus sessions where we invited speakers from the Ministry of Education, academics, women CSOs, eco-oriented schools, and a religious leader. Next slide, please. So now our findings. We propose that climate education needs to reconnect students with at least 3 resources. Firstly, roots, reconnection with local, cultural, and ancestral ways of being and doing. Modern climate education and Western scientific rationalism, more generally, alienate students from local wisdom, local practices, and even local food, casting them as inferior to imported knowledges, food, and lifestyles. A participant in one of our workshops, for example, commented on the snack we provided, a steamed purple yam sprinkled with grated cheese. Wow, the yam goes up one level here. Steamed yam is often considered village or rural food, while the Western originated colonially introduced cheese made the snack, according to him, goes up one level. Participants in Bali, Poso, and Yogyakarta workshops also mentioned how Indonesian young generation are more interested in global pop cultures, including food, while local cultural traditions are often considered backward. This disconnection from locality brought by colonial ways of thinking is problematic for climate education. For thousands of years, our ancestors had lifestyles that kept the earth and nature healthy. In just 200 years, capitalism and colonialism ruined it. Western climate education has too often oriented itself towards new innovations and future change, and overlooked the importance of our ancestral wisdom. Our participants' lesson plans demonstrate various local wisdoms, from farming practices to cultural philosophies that might already have the answers to the question of how humans can live harmoniously with nature. While we clearly cannot return to the past, the wisdom of the past can be drawn upon to better understand and live wisely in the present. One example is the degree of respect our ancestors have for nature, such as sasi, prohibition to fish or farm for certain days or weeks to let nature heal, sacred forest, self-limiting human invasion to natural spaces, and farming rituals, as you can see in the photo here, that treat land and crops as living entities, not objects of exploitation. This reconnection with ancestral cultural locality fosters a sense of place-based groundedness. For me personally, it provides something to hold on, a kind of psychological or spiritual resource in times of helplessness like this climate crisis. This is a source of long-term stamina. Next slide, please. Secondly, water, reconnection with nature and our body. Modern education, including climate education, is still mainly inside the four classroom walls, disconnected from nature. A school leader in our workshop said children nowadays are no longer playing in paddy fields after school, nor paying attention to water level in the river, because they have mobile phones to play with and reliable tap water regardless of the seasons. Modernity makes our children lose both connections with and knowledge about nature's condition around them. Same condition with the disconnection from our body. Our bodies are disconditioned by global capitalist systems, and we lose our ability to connect with our body in a nurturing, organic way. Our bodies, 70% water, are forced to work too hard, eat processed food, and sleep too little. In our education, students are not really taught to be skillful in caring for their physical and mental health. One cultural activist in our workshop in Yogyakarta said that global food systems damage our topsoil, our nutrition cycles, and emit greenhouse gases. But a return to local food
Pak
system is
Teguh, I'm
almost
sorry. Can
impossible.
you wrap up very soon?
Yes,
Thank
two
you.
more minutes. Thank you. Um, Return to local food system is almost impossible because our body and our palate has been conditioned by colonialism and capitalism. We need to teach experientially nature connectedness and ethics of care, including care for oneself as a part of climate education. The connection with nature and our body fosters health and well-being, which are needed for long-term climate struggle. Next slide, please. Lastly, live reconnection with each other in communal collectivist life. In modern education, students are atomized into individuals with learning objectives, competencies, and evaluations applied to individuals and climate and towards a vision of individual success, Western hyper individualism. For me, in the Indonesian context where climate awareness is still low, the struggle can feel very lonely. The so-called collective action might just be reduced to clicking petitions. To go long and far, we need to tap into and revive the collectivist roots of our society. Meeting other activists and like-minded educators is so energizing, which is what we felt in workshops throughout our projects. How can this be included in climate education so that student stamina is maintained? How can climate education prepare students for long-term climate activism through persistent networking? The connection with each other fosters enthusiasm, belongingness, and a sense of psychological home. One small leaf might be insignificant, but a lot of leaves provide great shade, comfort, and durability. I think I will stop here. Thank you. Yus, I return this to you.
Thank you so much, Pak Teguh. Now I'm going to invite our second presenter. She's back on the same. So our next presenter is Zaima Tusadia. She's a lecturer at the UIN Sunan Kudus. Sorry. She's also a PhD candidate at the Radboud University Nijmegen at the Faculty of Philosophy, Theology, and Religious Studies. Her interest is issue on ecofeminism, eco-Islam, and eco-jurisprudence. Let's hear from her presentation. Go ahead, Zaima.
Yes, thank you, Yus, for giving me time to present my research entitled Alam yang Bertasbih, Decolonising Materialism in the Ritual of Temon Banyu Beras at the Northern Kendeng Mountain. Next slide, please. Yeah. As a background, this is the situation, the location of the Northern Kendeng Mountains that span from Tuban in East Java to Rembang, Pati, and Kudus. My research focused at two places at Rembang and Pati. Next slide. The background of the study, yeah. At 2011, there is a presidential decree number 26 on the conservation status of the northern Kendeng Mountains in Rembang, since it covers the groundwater basin area of Batu Putih. However, although there is this decree, the provincial government of Central Java has issued a mining permit to PT Semen Indonesia since 2012. And then the local farmers in Rembang, especially those residing in the Ring 1 area of PT Semen Indonesia, started to resist PT Semen Indonesia. They filed a lawsuit against PT Semen Indonesia and also judicial review. And in 2016, the decision of the Supreme Court, Mahkamah Agung, is to cancel the permit of PT Semen Indonesia in 2016. However, PT Semen Indonesia continues the mining operation until now. So, as kind of resistance, the local community who reside at Ring One, they do kind of tradition called Kupatan Kendeng. Can you please go to the next slide? Yeah, Kupatan tradition is not a new tradition among Javanese community because this is a well-known tradition. However, the people in Ring One in Rembang, they add new dimension of this tradition. Kupatan tradition is a kind of post Idul Fitri communal rite of Thanksgiving, where people eat together the kupatan that have been cooked in their homes. But the people in Ring One added a new dimension. The previous kupatan only consists of two dimension between God and human, but the people there at the third dimension, it is a dimension, the connection between God, human, and nature. Next, please. Yeah, this is the photo of Kupatan Kendeng in 2022. So this is the kupat that have been cooked together. So actually, this tradition is all tradition where every household made their own kupat. But since 2016, they bring the domestic kitchen to the public space as kind of resistance. So this is to show that the space of cooking, the space of life has been destroyed because of the mining done by PT Semen Indonesia. Next, please. During the Kupatan Kendeng, they hold a ritual called Temon Banyu Beras. Temon Banyu Beras mean unifying water and rice. As a hereditary tradition, each family in Javanese Muslim community, I told you before, that they prepare the ketupat at their homes. However, since 2015, the Muslim community in the Ring 1 area has brought the domestic space into the public one, cooking kupat together in the ritual called Temon Banyu Beras, which literally means unification of water and rice. This show that extractive industries, especially PT Semen Indonesia, brings to women-led resistance movement, defending subsistence economic against materialist and capitalist encroachment. We see here that women mobilize rituals as a politically potent resistance action, transforming ceremonies, cosmologies, and everyday cultural practices into nonviolent tactics to contest mining hegemony and make visible its gendered harms. So, next, the objective of this research is to reveal the annual ritual of Temon Banyu Beras carried out by farmers in the northern Kendeng Mountain as a form of resistance against materialism, utilizing ecofeminist and eco-Islamic frameworks. Next, please. Yeah. Um, Temon Banyu Beras stand against materialism. Bacon said that every existence, including human beings, is just a clump of matter. This perspective also holds that humans are alienated from nature, consider themselves superior to it. So the planet is an object. In the case of cement mining in the North Kendeng Mountains, the government, along with PT Semen Indonesia, view the cars as an object and resource to be extracted. Using both ecofeminism and eco-Islam, next slide, please. I would like to reverse how the rituals of Temon Banyu Beras decolonize the materialistic perspective towards the earth, towards the mother earth, or towards the nature. According to ecofeminism, there is interconnectedness between patriarchy, women's oppression, and environmental degradation. And ecofeminist ethics promotes human nature interconnectedness and criticize anthropocentrism and etc. And Islam also uh, align with ecofeminists. Eco-Islam bridges the gap between Islamic teachings and ecological issues through reconstruction and deconstruction. Reconstruction refer to criticizing anthropocentrism in the relationship between God, human, and nature, while deconstruction involves reviewing unsustainable Islamic cosmological ethics and theology, with some principles like Khalifah, Mizan, Amanah, Hayan, etc. We will see there is something that comes up from the tradition of Temon Banyu Beras that uh, correspond with both ecofeminism and eco-Islam. Next slide. Yeah, this is the picture of women during the ritual of Temon Banyu Beras. Next slide. Temon Banyu Beras between ecofeminism and eco-Islam. One of the important thing that comes up during the ritual is the prayer of Ibu Bumi that they read during the ritual of Temon Banyu Beras. They read this prayer. Ibu Bumi wes mari, Ibu Bumi dilarani, Ibu Bumi kang adili, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Those women chant this kind of prayer. That is the combination of the indigenous prayer of Sedulur Sikap and Muslim in the area. When they bring the rice to the spring next to the Kendeng Mountain, and then when they back to their home, also they chant this kind of prayer. The last, yeah, my last slide. The
Yes, wrap
finding,
it up, please.
yeah, the finding of this research, they believe that the earth is alive. If we look back to the definition of doing decolonized research, that the colonial separate human from nature. But we see here the local people at the northern Kendeng Mountains, they believe that the earth is alive. So we bring these voices that come from the ground. The earth is alive. The earth is not a material. The earth is not an object. And the second one is sacred human nature interconnectedness, and the third is respect for mothers. One of the quote that I took from my interviewees, they say the Mother Earth is alive. Everything in it glorifies God or bertasbih. Alam is alam yang bertasbih, just like us. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. We don't have a lot of time, so please write your question on the chat box. I'm now going to invite Haryani. Haryani, are you ready? And please be reminded we don't have a lot of time. Condense your presentation. We would love to have a discussion. So 7 minutes, is that okay? Just briefly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
I
you.
will try. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me here so I can present my short research on the decolonialization through methodology. Actually, this is one of the reflections of our projects, namely research and advocacy project in climate change related to human mobility, together with the Percik Institute and 11 Maret University. As you may see that I myself is one of the activists and also a researcher. In this presentation, I would like to follow up the discussion about decolonizations in relation to the dual identity as a researcher and also activist on these projects. So I may reflect on the methodological approach and decolonialization processes. Just for your information, RACPA project or Research and Advocacy on Climate Change Policy Action is a 5-year project emphasized on the human mobility together with some collaborator from Jesuit Refugee Services and Philippine collaboration and also with project. This project aims to understand the community view of climate change impact on human mobility as empowering the community. Uh, we already know based on the IOM report 23 that in the mobility discourse, there are some of persistence in the media and political discourse under the terminology of climate migrants. However, the involvement of community experiences in the science academia and debate, it is less captured. So this presentation so emphasize on that issue by taking the community mapping as one of the research methodology, which more participatory. Community mapping itself enable us to work with the community to capture the perspective of local community on climate vulnerability and resilience. The also the method who able us to integrate the community perspective with the technical map. So it may provide a basis for dialogue between community and the government, including between the traditional knowledge and the modern one. I think Dr. Tamara already informed us about the definition of coloniality and decolonializations, in which that the subjectivity of producing knowledge is one of the important point. So based on our experiences in applied community mapping, we understand that the community mapping is not only consists of advocacy activities, but also this is the method to raise awareness. Some of activities such as transect walk, focus group discussion, community mapping workshop, integrate the community sketch map with the technical map, which is more modern one, and the validation of technically integrated community map, including us, the community, to present their own view on community mapping, is are some of the design that we work together with the community. By those step of research, we understand that decolonializations is also open possibility to share an alternative knowledge and recognize who are the subject of producing knowledge. And based on our understandings about the community mapping and colonializations, in our research, we do not use the word protocol, which come from uh, scientific backgrounds, but we tend to work together with the community with some procedure, including we together with the community decide the subtopic about the research itself. So you may see on the pictures how we figure out the map of the community mapping result from the community. And then the second things, the community try to giving the post-it, informing us about some of the experiences related to their experiences living in the climate vulnerability. And on the slide number 8, you may see the integrated map uh, between the traditional and the modern post-it. And based on these processes, when we understand decolonialization theory, we think that the community mappings able to give a space for the community to work together with the researchers. And researcher present, it is not only extracting data from the community, but also work together with the community as an engaging project, which is more meaningful. By these processes, the position of researcher and also as facilitator of the community becoming a way to collect the memory and record it the memory as part of producing knowledge. By these processes, we get a further impact of the project, particularly raising awareness of the community uh, related to climate impact. One of the participants said that I become more aware of the natural changes that occur in the Tambak Rejo area, uh, which previously there were many ponds, but now the area are more vulnerable with the flooding. And they said, I know more about the condition faced by Tambak Rejo resident, and the community knowledge of the climate change has increased. This narrations show us that the community mapping, it is not only uh, getting knowledge from teacher, but also raise a new awareness for the community. And on the my last slide, I try to reflect on the process of knowledge productions using community mapping. We do understand that decolonialization knowledge production requires a suitable applied method that represents the mechanical instrument and also restructure the power relation, particularly between researcher and the community. And so far, what we already done with the community, we should say that the map become an evidence-based advocacy processes in which the community can use the map uh, to dialogue with the government and humanitarian actor. By these processes, power dynamics among actors can be maintained and play on the ground. I think that's all my presentation, and thank you. Back to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much. My apology to rushing you to present your work. We don't have a lot of time. So last but not least, can I invite Dewi Chandraningrum, please?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So the study investigates Dorothea Rosa Herliani novel entitled Isinga through the intersecting lenses of mothering, gendered memory, and fictional pedagogy within the Papuan setting. Papua's representation in Indonesian literature has often been mediated by dominant state narratives that marginalize indigenous voices, especially those of women, often called as Mama Papua. Isinga as a novel foreground maternal storytelling as a locus for cultural preservation, ethical guidance, and historical consciousness, reframing mothering beyond biological roles into a political and pedagogical act. The maternal figure served as both narrator and custodian of communal memory, resisting erasure amid social political turbulence, environmental exploitation, and cultural transformation. So this research situates the novel within feminist and post-colonial literary discourse, engaging with theories of cultural mothering, subaltern pedagogy to explore how literature can function as a decolonial educational tool. By integrating Isinga into Indonesian literature pedagogy, particularly in higher education, the study advocates for a more critical and empathetic engagement with the marginalized histories. And the findings highlight that fictional pedagogy, when informed by gendered and decolonial perspective, not only enriches literary appreciation but also cultivate ethical awareness, intercultural competence, and socio-political literacy among the students. And the findings are the first finding is mothering could function as counter memory, and mothering could also function as a decolonial literacy in the Indonesian classroom. Mothering as a form gendered political memory can function also as a narrative strategies of resistance and also narrative strategy to unsilent history. Let's see how the students react toward the novel. Reading Isinga challenged me to rethink how literature can teach history. Mama Kame in the novel saw me that mothering is not just about raising children, but also about protecting land, culture, and memory. I realize that many history, especially Papuan women's, are missing from official narrative, yet they live on through everyday acts and oral stories. Discussing the novel in class made me see how gender shaped resistance and how women's work in market, churches, garden is deeply political. Isinga, as a novel, turned our classroom into a space for listening, questioning, connecting literature to real struggle for justice and freedom. So that's one of the students' comment. And then the second finding is that within the Isna, we could find the symbolism, imagery, and resilience of the gendered body of Mama Papua. So, in conclusion, Isinga exemplifies the capacity of literature to function simultaneously as a cultural preservation, but also political intervention as well as pedagogical innovation. By centering mothering as a mode of resistance and memory making, the novel reframes domestic and care work as a site of historical agency. So most of the time, we consider domestic chore, care work as invisible, but now it is becoming a political sign. Ultimately, this approach aligned with a broader project of decolonizing education, one that seeks not only to diversify literary content but also to reorient the very practices of teaching and learning toward justice, inclusivity, and mutual recognition. I think that's all. My presentation on the decolonizing reading novel Isinga. That is one of my painting of the African American woman that could also relate our decolonial narrative with the Papuan mama. Thank you. But use over to you.
My apology. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now we can start with the question and answer. And I see already there's a one questions in the chat box. And I would like to invite the other also to write their question soon. But then can I invite Tamara to answer the first question?
Yes, thank you very much. I see that the first question comes from Franz Weisen from Radboud University. So Western science, Western civilization. First of all, Western civilization is a borrowed civilization. There's no such thing as European civilization before. You have Egyptian, Chinese, or even Andes civilization that existed thousands of years before the West or Europe became an entity. Um, and what Western science does is that they took from other worlds, from all the civilizations, and uproot these ways of knowing and these knowledge from their roots, from their origins, and at the same time erase double erasure, erasing these roots and erasing the traces of those erasures. Now and then, after they took these knowledges and ways of knowing, they sanitize them and then present them as part of science as the valid way of knowing or the universal way of knowing. So that's how it incorporated all this knowledge from outside and to serve its purpose. Now, you said global. From the colonial, we see this rather problematic term because when you see global here, global and local, here science is the global and the rest are local. That's why, for example, you have local wisdoms. And also at the same time, when I refer to Anibal Quijano, for example, he's a sociologist, but I have to refer to him as a Peruvian sociologist. While a sociologist sitting in Radboud or in University of Amsterdam will call themselves sociologists, not Dutch sociologists. So the Europe becomes the global, universal, and the rest becomes potential. And therefore, science is the global knowledge, the rest is basically local. So science in this case, considering the hierarchy, then science becomes the knowledge and the rest becomes alternatives knowledge or local wisdom, as we know in Indonesia, for example, when referring to things that are not considered scientific. So science is interested in studying the interconnected of knowledge systems to find common goals. Decolonial is not interested in that. What decolonial is interested in, and this is what we mean by the linking, is to reduce science to size. That is, it's not the valid way of knowing. It's science has no right nor authorities to be the only subject of knowledge, and therefore no rights and no authority to study others as objects of knowledge. So delinking means to delink from that kind of hierarchy to be able to imagine all knowledges, knowledges in plural. In English, you only have one knowledge. This is also because of the politics of knowledge. Yes. So to delink from this idea that science is the only valid way of knowing, so that we can, break this idea of normalizing science as the way of knowing and normalizing the hierarchy. And therefore, once we break down the hierarchy, then we can shed light on the relationality underlying all the different knowledge systems and see the relations between them. Not one has power to study the other. So that's what the linking means, and that's why, for example, the interest of science is still very different than the interest of decolonial, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we're still waiting for more questions, and I have a one question for you, Tamara. If I do, I see any other question from the chat box? I don't think so. So my question is, why do we need to decolonize the research methodology? What if we don't do it? What is the future of the? So what is your take on this?
So, speaking from the colonial perspectives, research methodologies are ways to study things that are considered there to be studied, right? And in the modernity project, what needs to be studied is the history of progress. We want to see how much we progress and all this kind of things to see what we have made visible. Yes. Now, when we and research methodologies are not meant for people like you and me to be the subject of knowledge to do research. We are objects of knowledge. We are assigned as objects, and the one who has the right to know is somewhat the European guys with scientific degrees, for example, to know about us and our culture. Now, when we step into this university as researchers, we're taking over a space that was not meant for us. It's an act of trespassing. Now, when we try to know ourselves and our experiences and experience of others who are erased as, or reduced as objects, then we cannot use the same methodology. So, in
Okay.
order to see experiences of erasures, we need other ways because the methodologies are made to see the visible, not the invisible. So, if we want to dig into those invisible areas or silence areas, we need other types of other ways of
Mhm.
knowing, and that's why it's important to decolonize
Mhm.
methodologies, assuming that you still want to work in universities, for example, assuming you still want to acknowledge university as the way, the rite of passage for you to become a knowledge producer. In decoloniality, that's not necessarily important. University is a colonial pillar.
Mhm.
Therefore, university produce knowledge in order to sustain coloniality, and therefore, decolonial ways of knowing is more about outside of university. Decolonial is introduced to university as a concept to explain to academics practices that they have not seen yet.
Mhm.
But for practitioners, for people on the ground, for grassroots or indigenous communities, they don't need this concept because they have the praxis.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yes.
sense. Sorry.
Thank you. Lotte, do we have a question from the audience, from the on-site audience?
So yeah, we have question.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Hani, and I'd like to. My question is regarding the research I'm currently working on, looking at the basic education in China and Japan, and we know that the Japanese once colonized Indonesia. So, what do you think about children also needing to be taught about household chores? And can this be made part of the curriculum from basic education to higher education? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Who would like to answer this? Or Handi wants to, point it out one of the speaker. Mbak Dewi, can I invite you?
Dr. Tamara, please.
Oh, please. Okay.
Um, First of all, I would say there is colonization and occupation. In decoloniality, we would consider Western European colonization. What the Japanese did in Indonesia, we would consider that as occupation rather than colonization. It's quite a long story, but let's keep it that way. I think, you know, it's good to look at a certain system and take the good aspects, but also to be critical of aspects that damages it. Decolonial is not about glorifying, non-Western practices as well. Related to the example that you mentioned, I'm sorry I didn't get all of it, but children being for example, do house chores and taking care of their environment. I think this is also like, if we see it as a way to relate to your environment, and as a way that to instill within children, especially in urban areas, that you're part of the space that you're in. Your space is your territory, and we're as human always part of the territory. Then one lesson that we can learn from that practice is a practice of relating, that you're not separated from your space, that you're not the one in charge of the space, you're not in control of the space, you have no right to conquer the space, but you take care of the space, and then the space takes care of you. So that's one way to look at it. And if you want to put it as a praxis of relationality, of course it can also be a practice of disciplining bodies. So it has this double sides, that depends on how it's being practiced and how it's presented, or how this practice is also incorporated in the pedagogy. I hope
Oh,
that.
thank you, Tamara. I hope Henny is taking a note on that. And there's also an answer from Ibu Dewi Chandraningrum in the chat room. So if you can read that, it is additional to what Tamara mentioned. I have. Do we have another question from the audience?
Okay, we have another question.
Yes.
Is it okay? All right.
Terima kasih banyak. Nama saya Ruar Transport dari Belanda, tapi sekarang di Bogor. Thank you so much for your presentations. I have one question because what I really like from all your presentations is you bring in a very critical perspective that challenges many of what we think is knowledge. Whether it's decolonial, feminist, including nature, all these voices challenging what we think is knowledge. Now, my question is, how can we, in a sense, mainstream that radical critical look? Or is that not possible? Is this a way of looking at things that can only exist, let's say, in the margin of the academy? Or can it really be brought to the center of the academy? I'm really looking forward to your thoughts about that.
Who do you wish to answer the questions? Is that question for everyone?
Yeah, for everyone.
Okay. Can I invite Teguh first to comment on it? Sorry, you're muted, Teguh. Oh, still. Devi, can I invite you, please?
Yeah. Can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's depend how we see it, whether from the margin or from the center. For example, to look at the colonial feminism radically from the margin, meaning to begin listening to those who historically silenced, like indigenous women, women of color, rural mothers, domestic workers, friends of disability, and other subaltern subjects. From the margin, decolonial feminism is not a theory imported from the global north, but it is a practice of survival, a practice of care, a practice of knowledge making. Like doing household chores is not just a routine, but it is a practice of care. What Zaimatus present previously is also about care, which is display in public, and it is a protest. And by seeing this, it become a vantage point of insight and reimagination where new epistemology of care, ecology, and relationality are formed. And if we would like to look this radically from the center, it means that decoloniality and decolonial feminism demands radical unlearning. Demands again radical unlearning. It means that a confrontation with how privilege, Western modernity, institutional feminism have reproduced within colonial hierarchy of the knowledge. It asks those at the center to decenter themselves. It asks ourselves to undress our privileges. And it also asks ourselves to redistribute power, to redistribute epistemic authority, and to make space for multiplicity, to make space for plurality in many ways of knowing and being. So to look radically then is unsettle both center and the margin. Over to you, Bayus. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your answer. I hope Ruard is happy with that. Uh, can I ask you to stay put, because picking up of this caring, mother care, and then the often that is used from Zaid Matus, Ibu Bumi, and then there's a lot of metaphor on the maternal terminology being used within your research. Does it affect credibility or seriousness of the environmental discourse among scientists, policymaker, and public? Can you comment on that?
Yes. Thank you, Mbak Yus. Yeah, it's a really hard question because I have no data about how the impact of this maternal image to the scientists and etc. and in for the public. But for now, we are happy. In case of Indonesia, we are a bit happy and should be optimistic. I mean that there are a lot of people who move and shift their concern to ecological issues, even in universities, for instance. A lot of people bring their major interest to ecological issues. They talk about climate changes and etc. But frankly speaking, that talking about ecological issues is for now is still a kind of elitist issues. I mean, there's only those people who are know about this, the people who problematize. Yeah, they have a concern about this because why I say problematize because in terms of mining, for instance, that given to some faith-based organization. Some of them see that this is not a problem because they don't really feel the problem of climate issues, for instance, because they live in privileges and etc. They move from air conditioned room to air conditioned office and etc. So this is not a problem for them.
Mhm.
But yeah, still, we have to be optimistic that through uh, ongoing discourse in ecological issues, we hope that some next time, maybe in 5-10 years, these
Mhm.
issues become common issues among us and not only a perspective but also be practices on our daily life. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone, Haryani or Teguh Dewi, want to respond to the terminology of mothering?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dewi.
Oh yes, sorry. Okay, I think the term of mothering itself is like a blade with two edge. Reclaiming it, it means that the epistemic and ethical value of care, labor, and interdependence that the colonial and patriarchal system have historically devalued is being valued again. So, like colonial schooling often separated intellectual and manual work, but the household chore is value work. So, from a decolonial feminist standpoint, maternal metaphor like Mother Earth do not weaken environmental discourse like in Zain research, and they claim it from colonial and patriarchal epistemology that have long been separated human and nature. And the metaphor is Western technocratic framing of the environment as neutral resource and instead asserts a relational ontology grounded in care, reciprocity, and interdependence. So, this value embedded in many indigenous and matrifocal cosmology. And while scientists or modern, like us, or policymaker trained in modern rationality may perceive Mother Earth as sentimental or unscientific, a decolonial feminist reading reveals that this perception itself reflects a colonial hierarchy of knowledge that privileges abstraction over embodiment over care. So,
Mhm.
maternal metaphors challenge that hierarchy by centering our embodied, affective, and communal form of knowing and remind us that environmental justice is not merely technical, but it is ethical, it is historical, and it is political. Thank
Thank,
you. Over to
thank
you,
you.
Yus.
Yes, yeah. We really don't have a time, but I still would like to hear from Yanni in regards to Ruard question, and then the last one will be go to Tamara. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I would like to respond about the idea of mainstreaming idea on the from margin to the center. Uh, I think the idea of powerless and to be empowered can be one of the transformative processes, particularly to recognize the knowledge production. What I really feel right now is only on the university institute the process of formalizing knowledge itself, while the practicality of knowledge based on lived experiences less recognized. So in this way we need applied methodology which less dominated by objectivity and validating object, because that is the clear an issue for the practical knowledge, life experiences. In this way, the idea of decolonizing methodology in this challenge, I think. Thank you. You are still
Yeah.
unmute, Mari.
Uh, so responding to Ruart's mainstreaming, if you decolonize, if we decolonize or in decolonial, then there's no center and margins, because once we reduce the West a province instead of the universal, once we reduce university as one site of knowing, among many other sites of knowing, there's no mainstream. There are only streams. So when there's no center and no margins, we don't need to mainstream, because we open possibilities for plural streams, and that's what pluriversality is. Diversity implies there's universality, and we diversify that. But pluriverse is multiple streams.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara. That was wonderful closing, multiple streaming. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to remind you that this is part of the NICMCR program. I just put it in the chat box. And thank you. And then, well, hopefully we can keep the conversation going. I give the floor back to Lotte. Thank you so much. Bye for now.